Net neutrality is actually hugely important. Essentially, it means that all data has to be treated equally, no matter who creates it. It's why the internet is a weirdly level playing field. And startups can supplant established brands. That's how Facebook supplanted MySpace, which supplanted Friendster, which supplanted actually having any friends. The point is, the internet in its current form is not broken. And the FCC is currently taking steps to fix that. Ending net neutrality would allow big companies to buy their way into the fast lane, leaving everyone else in the slow lane. And telecom companies will say they would never slow down a website's speed in order to get more money out of them. But let me tell you a little story. Recently, Comcast was negotiating with Netflix. This graph shows Netflix download speeds on various providers. See if you can guess when Netflix agreed to Comcast demands. It's right there. That has all the ingredients of a mob shakedown. It's not just anti-corporate hippies who think that abandoning net neutrality is a bad idea.
Google, Facebook, Netflix, Amazon all signed on to this letter supporting net neutrality.
What's being proposed is so egregious, activists and corporations have been forced onto the same side. That's basically Lex Luthor knocking on Superman's apartment door and going, listen, I know we have our differences, but we have got to get rid of that arsehole in apartment 3B. And you might wonder, well, look, if everyone is against this, how is it even possibly happening? Well, consider who would benefit from this change. Cable companies. Verizon wants a two-tier system so badly, they sued the government to force the rule change that's currently being discussed. These companies have Washington in their pockets to a conveniently almost unbelievable degree.
Comcast has spent $18,810,000 in lobbying last year. That's more than any other company except for defense contractor Northrop Grumman.
So just to be clear, the ranking of who buys government influence is number 1, military-industrial complex, and number 2, the provider of lizard-lick towing. Look, I could show you the troublingly cosy relationship between cable companies and Washington in any number of ways. But perhaps the most succinct way is this.
The president has picked Tom Wheeler, a former top lobbyist for cable and wireless companies, to be the next chair of the Federal Communications Commission.
Yes, the guy who used to run the cable industry's lobbying arm is now running the agency tasked with regulating it. That is the equivalent of needing a babysitter and hiring a dingo. with the fact that they are practically overseeing their own oversight, it is hardly surprising that cable companies are basically monopolies now. A federal study found that 96% of the population had access to 2 or fewer cable broadband providers. It's almost as if they've agreed to stay out of each other's way like drug cartels. Maybe it's because of their lack of competition that they get away with providing such shitty service. We pay more for our internet service than almost anybody else on Earth, and yet the download speeds we get lag behind Estonia. Estonia, a country where, from the looks of it, they still worry about Shrek attacks. Is it any wonder that in a massive recent customer satisfaction surveys, Comcast and Time Warner Cable came in dead last? I know the cable companies will say, oh, they support net neutrality protections, or they remain committed to the open internet, or just the tip. But let me remind you, they also say that they'll be at your house between 2 and 6 tomorrow afternoon. And does any part of you really expect them to f***ing turn up? And yet, our government looks set to end net neutrality and let these companies run hog wild, and we're just going to let them. Advocates should not be talking about protecting net neutrality. They shouldn't even use that phrase. They should call it preventing cable company f***ery, because that is what it is, and it might actually compel people to want to do something.